And of course, there are those who support this ruling from the Supreme Court today as well. But no matter where you stand on that, it's important to understand where the ruling comes from and what it means going forward. So let's bring in Jon Taylor, chair of the Department of Political Science with UTSA. Jon, always a pleasure to have you here. So let's start with this monumental ruling. What's at the heart of it? What really was the factor in this decision?
Well, I mean, we want to do the legal side. It's the right to privacy is what it comes down to, because Roe versus Wade is based on the 1965 Supreme Court case of Griswold versus Connecticut. It's out of the Griswold decision that the right to privacy is established under both the 9th and the 14th Amendments. Out of the Roe decision, we have to realize that other right to privacy cases come into play, particularly the Lawrence decision from 2003, which deals with sexual privacy, sexual relations privacy, and then the 2015 Obergefell decision, which deals with marriage equality, same-sex marriage.
So, I mean, can I boil it down simply, Jon, in saying that elections matter? That your vote matters in this whole thing when we talk about the Supreme Court?
Absolutely, they matter, because let's be honest here. The last 3 Supreme Court justices appointed, all appointed by Trump, all voted in favor of overturning Roe versus Wade today.
And there was such talk during his presidency about those appointments being his legacy, and that's what we're watching play out right now. You mentioned some of those other topics outside of abortion, things like same-sex marriage, contraception. Those have been the 2 other issues, in addition to abortion, that there has been real concern about today in terms of could this ruling affect those rights? Can you explain what's behind that concern?
Absolutely. Justice Thomas, in his opinion, it was a concurring opinion, he essentially said that these particular issues, the issues related to contraception, to same-sex marriage, to same-sex relations, need to be revisited. That should be a warning sign to anybody who is concerned about marriage equality, concerned even about contraceptives for married people. But
in the same light, Justice Alito said this ruling only has to do with abortion. So how do you, I mean, are we reading tea leaves here on what may happen?
I think we're trying to read some tea leaves here. To be honest, Justice Alito can say all he wants, but if you read through the decision, it's a long opinion, 200 plus pages. It seems more evident than not that those issues of same-sex marriage and of contraception among others are on the table.
So we'll wait to see what happens going forward. In that same vein, we're watching to see what's going to happen in terms of the politics of all of this, the political impacts. We heard the president say today that Roe is now definitely on the ballot come November. So with this decision now leaving it up to the states when it comes to abortion, do you think that there is going to be a significant impact to Texas in November based off of this?
That's a great question, because, first of all, 6 months or 5 months really is a lifetime in politics. We don't know what else is going to happen between now and early November. One would like to think that the abortion issue and the right to privacy issues, among others, reproductive rights, is going to be on the table and be out there. However, one never knows. Additionally, is it going to energize voters, particularly young female voters who are more likely to be concerned about reproductive rights access? We don't know. That's one of the million-dollar questions, I think, as we head into the summer and particularly into the early fall.
Jon, we have 30 million people who don't vote. I mean, we have 30 million people who don't vote every year. I mean, is this a wake-up call? I mean, certainly Democrats are trying to make it that. I mean, I heard the president, I heard the vice president, I heard people up and down, the Democratic ranks saying this is on the ballot in November. I mean, do you see this as a wake-up call? Is this a seminal moment when it comes to voting in our country?
As a political scientist, I would say I would hope so. But to be honest, realistically, don't hold your breath. I mean, voters are voters. They're relatively fickle, and especially in a midterm election, turnout is always traditionally lower than a general election for president. I mean, Texas in particular is not good with turnout. I'd like to hope and think that we'd see a higher turnout based on this issue. However, one can make the argument that pro-life voters may be just as energized as reproductive rights voters. It's quite possible.
I always like asking your perspective when it comes to political history. So 1973, when Roe versus Wade was ruled on, certainly times have changed. The timing of that decision when it comes to elections at that time was different than now. But is there any political history that leads us to believe this could be the implications when it comes to elections based on what happened in 73 and the years following?
You could go back to Dred Scott in the 1850s, which was the catalyst for the Civil War. Let's please not go there. However, it's relatively rare to see a Supreme Court case like this create such a almost what we might call a paradigmatic shift politically. One can make the argument that's what we saw with the Brown decision in the 1950s that ends segregation in public schools in particular. One never knows. There are Supreme Court decisions along the way that we've seen that may or may not have an impact, some that we think are going to be profound. I think this one is profound. We're talking about 49 years of abortion being constitutional, now being found to be unconstitutional and being sent back to some states where you may see complete elimination of abortion, other states where you may see regulation, in fact, may see even expansion of abortion rights. California, Oregon, and Washington have talked about that. So one never knows. That said, you would hope that this is one of those catalysts for the less than thrilled voters that don't turn out too often.
Bottom line here, Jon, is this, if you're Greg Abbott, if you're Dan Patrick, if you're somebody in state leadership, I've seen the Beto O'Rourke campaign already trying to capitalize on this. And in the latest polls, it seems as if maybe he has some momentum in the governor's race. How are you viewing this? Is this energizing your base? Or is this, are you worried that, it's going to energize people who don't normally vote?
Well, you first of all think that Abbott, Patrick, and Ken Paxton, the three that really pushed this thing, and the legislature as well, are probably doing a victory lap today, and that's their right. But O'Rourke obviously has been talking about protecting reproductive rights. There's a big rally in Austin on Sunday. Will it again? It goes back to this idea: will it energize voters? Abortion is but one issue of a number. We talk about voters as well being concerned about everything from the electric grid to high gas prices to concerns about guns and gun safety. One just never knows.
Yeah, the common rule though is people usually vote with their pocketbook. We'll see if that changes after today. Jon Taylor, the chair of the Political Science and Geography Department at UTSA. Thank you always for your time and insight.
Pleasure.